Okay, be careful. This could be dangerous. At the outset, I just want to say that when we go through this program, there may be people who are thinking we're bragging or something, and we're not bragging. My wife and I are two of the not smartest people in the world, or maybe I should speak for myself. But, in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 27, it says that God chooses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And that's one of the beautiful things about us not being exceptional people is that it glorifies God, because people are kind of scratching their heads and thinking all this is being done. It has to be God. It can't be them. And so we don't want anybody to think that we're bragging or anything as we go through this presentation. I also want to say that the purpose for this is for the glory of God. We're not here to raise money. We're here to report to you what God's doing on the other side of the world. And if you want to be a part of that, that's fine. That's great. We choose to be a part of it because we think it's the greatest work in all of the world. And so I'm just very thankful to be able to tell about it. India is located on the other side of the world. A lot of people don't really know this, where exactly, if you're out in California and you drill through the middle of the earth, you should come up in India or somewhere in the Indian Ocean. But this country, this little red rectangle, triangle that you see here on the screen is India. And it looks very small and insignificant when you're looking at all of the world up there. 1/6 of the world's population lives in India. We work in the state of Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu is the size of the state of North Carolina, where we live now. But the population of Tamil Nadu is 9 times the population of the state of North Carolina, to give you some kind of an idea of how many people are located. A very crowded place. The people that we work among and the vast majority of the people who are converted in that country are Hindus. Hindus comprise 95% of the Indian population. I like this scripture from Jeremiah chapter 10, 3 through 5, talking about a man cutting down a tree, carving that tree, then bowing down to that tree. He has to nail the tree down, because if he doesn't nail it down, the tree falls over. And I just like to say that I would not serve a God who I have to hold up. My God holds me up. I don't have to hold my God up. But these gods, if you don't nail them down, they will fall over. And that's what Jeremiah was saying in Jeremiah chapter 10, 3 through 5. This is a scene we see every day all over the place. In every corner of every city, there is a Hindu temple. And here's a man who's bowed down. People are very well educated. It's a religion that's based on superstition. We have that in this country. Somebody goes to a baseball game, and they think that because they wore their hat upside down on the side of their head, their team won. And so they go back next week and they do the same thing. Well, that's superstition. And it's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? And when it turns into a religion, then it's really bad. And so it is a religion that's based in superstition. Psalm 106:36 says, "And they served their idols, which were a snare unto them." So these are the people that we're working among, is the people who are actually bowing down to idols. For they themselves show us what manner of entering in we had into you, and how that you turned to God from idols to serve the living and true God. A lot of times when I'm doing a presentation, people hear me say, turning to the living and true God. That's a scriptural statement that comes from 1 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 9. There's nothing more beautiful, more wonderful than seeing an individual who is worshiping an idol and teaching that person, and seeing the idols go into the garbage can, and finally sitting in a worship service and seeing that man or woman for the first time take that mouth that God created and try to use the living God who created them. It is a beautiful thing to be a part of. And it's happening. Most of the people, as I said, that have been converted have come from that background. There was given to him dominion, glory, and a kingdom that all people, all nations, and languages should serve him. Now, I like this scripture from Daniel chapter 7, specifically because it teaches us that every person on this earth, people say, are you a missions-minded congregation? Are you an evangelism-minded congregation? We don't have a choice in that. We don't have a choice as to whether we're evangelism-minded or mission-minded. God said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And so that's our responsibility. That world may be next door to us. Wherever it is, we have that responsibility. And it is for all people. Doesn't matter what nation they're from. Every person, every one of the 7 point however many billion people are on this earth today was created for the purpose of knowing and worshiping the true and living God. And it's just knowledge that stands between that person actually doing that and not doing that. And guess who has the knowledge? We have the knowledge. We are the link. That's why it's so important that we don't lose our focus. This is a village where I preached one night. I don't get to preach much in India anymore in a public setting because they've really ramped up the persecution. They're trying to get rid of Christians in that country. I've specifically asked that my name would not be used in this presentation because if they found out that I was doing that, and so I work with the students, I work in the schools, I work kind of behind and really help these brothers get to be enabled. And but when we do get off the grid and we get out in a place like this, it's the most wonderful thing to be able to get up. And right before I get up to preach, I think, who am I that God would let me get up in front of these people and tell them the most important thing they will ever hear in their lives? It really is a great, great privilege. Now, here's a wonderful thing. In 2021, there were 15,820 baptisms. That's just last year, the 15,820 baptisms. 128,160 heard. Now, that's the number I like to emphasize because it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6, Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, God gave the increase. Our job is to plant and water. Whether it's here or whether it's on the other side of the world, our job is to plant and water. If you don't see results from that, it's okay, you've done your job. But you'll see here roughly 1 out of 10 that have actually sat down in a Bible study wound up obeying. Because these brothers that I work with, they have a lot of Bible studies. The more Bible studies we have, the more results we're going to have. Last year, that 207 new congregations, that's not the 25 years that we've been working in India. That was from 2021. 207 new congregations of the churches of Christ were established in South India among these brothers with whom we work. So we go back. These are the numbers. Over the last 8 years, we started really, it was in 2014 that we started keeping up with all of these numbers. When you add all of these numbers up, it comes to 75,443 and that have actually been baptized in the last 8 years. I told somebody when I turned 50 years old, I told Kathy, not somebody, I told Kathy, I said, you know, this is going to go down in my life as being the very best year of my entire life. And then 51 happened. And I said, nope, this is the best. And 52 happened. I want to say every year it has gotten better ever since 50. And 67 was the greatest year of my life. And it just keeps getting better. Now, here's the number that really is important. Because when people see that number, they say, oh, yeah, sure, you go in, you teach, you baptize all of these people, but where are these people now? That's the number that really matters. Because if they don't go to heaven, if they don't stay faithful, what good is it to go and to teach and baptize people? So when we do a census and we go back over the last, please grasp this, guys. I know I talk kind of fast. Got a lot to get through here. And I had another cup of coffee in the break. And by the way, I just want to say I did have a cup of decaf coffee before we came here this morning. And it was a mistake. My wife put in the wrong thing in the coffee thing. So I had 2 regular cups after that. But 85% of the people, when we go back over the last 5 years, 85% of all of those who have been taught and baptized are still faithful and are still serving. And those numbers we don't even have here in the United States. And it's because my Indian brothers work so hard to keep the saved saved. And very important. This is one of the graduations. We have 28 schools of preaching. This is one of the graduations from those. We got behind during COVID because we couldn't meet and have graduations. And so I was at E-Road speaking for the graduation program there. I called the men up to the front. We were getting ready to take a picture, and I said, okay, everybody hold up however many fingers to represent the number of congregations that you have started in the last 3 years while you've been in school. So you'll see men holding up 1, some 2, some 3. I know one man who has 5 congregations that he has started and he preaches for on Sundays. And But anyway, and here's one more thing. Leave this in your mind, brothers and sisters, because this is one of the most important things about this work, and it makes it one of the greatest works in the world. We do not support preachers. There's a reason for that. There's nothing wrong with supporting preachers. You don't muzzle the ox that treads out the corn. But it really is detrimental to the longevity of the work. I told you 207 congregations were established last year. Those congregations, if we do go down in an airplane or whatever, they are not affected. Those congregations are self-indigenous congregations with self-supported preachers. And so everything is being done so that the work can stand on its own. People say, well, what are you doing there? Well, we're perpetuating new growth. That's our job, is to create programs to perpetuate new growth, do evangelism, train the brothers how to do evangelism. But all of these men, once they graduate from school, they are that's what Paul did. You know, when Paul went to Corinth, he had to make tents in order to be able to be there and start the church there. So he made tents. That's what he did in Thessalonica. He was a tent-making preacher, and that's what we have. You know, sometimes brothers come to me and they'll say, brother, I could do so much more if I had support. And I say, well, you know, that may be true. So what you need to do is you need to go start more congregations, because your support needs to come from India and not from a foreign source, because that cripples the work and hurts the work when it becomes dependent on us. It's kind of like our kids. You know, we want them to move out of the house finally, don't we, and stand on their own. And so this is another one of our. This brother Samuel, I'm shaking his hand in this picture. He is the teacher in the school. He was the second. He had the second best record of all of the graduations this year, and I was just thrilled to death to be sitting there with him. That scripture, Romans 10:15, how beautiful are the feet of those that bring the glad tidings of peace. And so what we're working to do is to put more boots on the ground. When you see those numbers increasing every year, part of the reason is because we have many, many more men. We're putting more boots on the ground in India carrying the gospel. And I tell those men, I say, your feet's some of the ugliest feet I've ever seen. So I don't know, you know, it says in Romans 10:15 we have beautiful feet. These not beautiful feet. Well, it's not because of the way they look on the outside. It's because of where those feet are carrying the heart and the mind of that man who's containing the gospel. That's what makes those feet beautiful. But anyway, I heard the numbers from these men. And when I got those numbers, because when I hear what's going on, and sometimes I'm just like, I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. I need proof of that. It's just too good. And so I did that very thing. So they went and they got the workbook. Now, brothers and sisters, let me tell you something. This work is real. We're there. We're in it. We know what's going on. So we have 13 men. That was Brother Samuel's class that you just saw. 13 men, all of their names. Here are the number of congregations that they have established. There's exactly the number of men in the last 3 years that they have baptized. And all I have to do is pull out one of those men and say, okay, I see you've started 2 congregations. Let's go. I want to meet these folks. They're there. They're there. I mean, the records, we can go back and give you the names of all of those who were baptized, because the records are kept. It's not a lie. It's not an exaggeration. It is the truth. As a matter of fact, the retention rate is actually, the numbers come up to 87%, but we say 85% because we really want to be, try to be accurate. Also, another thing that's happened in India is many years ago, there were denominational preachers who came through, and they taught a group of different men, but they didn't teach them all the gospel. They had about 3 or 4 months of training. They never taught them about the church. They never taught them the plan of salvation, but these men are so zealous, and they want more knowledge, but there's nowhere to get knowledge. Now, I want to tell you something. Our preachers and our schools, they are a walking Bible. When I'm teaching a class, I may have 400 references that I'm using in that class. If I get one of them off, they just stop. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, you got the wrong reference, brother. And usually they're right. Sometimes I stick one in there just so I can say, no, you're the one that's wrong this time. But they have an unbelievable Bible knowledge. And so this is a Saturday program. It's what we call an open Bible school. So for 3 months, they bring all of these men are denominational preachers. They come in and our brothers teach them, and they are thrilled to death to be able to sit at the feet of somebody with such Bible knowledge. And at this point, I spoke on this particular day. 8 of them had been baptized. I just checked on them a couple of weeks ago, and now 20 of these men have been baptized. This is what happened with Paul when he came through Ephesus, and Apollos had been there, and Apollos had not taught everybody properly in Ephesus. Paul taught them, and they were baptized again. And that's the problem with these men. They just don't have the right, they haven't been taught properly. And but anyway, it's a beautiful thing because now we focus on going back to their churches and helping them teach the people in their congregations. And you pull up in front of, sometimes you pull up in front of a church building, and there's the name, the Church of Christ, but when you look real carefully, you can see where the old name was painted over and the new name was painted on that building because the people love the truth and they obey the truth, and it becomes a congregation of the Lord's church. These are men that I worked very closely with. This was a planning session we had together. This was a prayer session. It was supposed to last for an hour. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. It went for about an hour and 45 minutes. These men really work together and encourage and provoke one another to love and good works. Then we went outside and I said, let's all take a picture together. These are some of the mightiest evangelists in all of the world. I don't deserve to be sitting there with these men. And I tell them all the time, I say, y'all are the ugliest bunch of men I've ever seen. You know, and we all understand that. We all understand that we're ugly, but we kind of relish in that. You know, we're thankful for that. They're very crude. They don't have excellent speech. And but Paul said he didn't have excellent speech either. And then I came across this scripture in 2 Corinthians 11:6. But though I be rude in speech, yet not in knowledge. You know, I was looking at these men, and Solomon, he's particularly ugly. I told him one day, I said, brother, you about as ugly as any of us. And he said, yeah, I am. And I said, I don't understand it. I said, you know, and he's so quiet. I mean, he's just docile, and you just can't even hardly get him to talk. And I just scratch my head, and I look at that guy because he is like the most powerful evangelist of everybody. And it took me years to realize the reason for the success is because of a heart filled with faith and a head full of knowledge. And when you take the knowledge and the faith and you couple those two together, you have an explosive situation. And it doesn't matter how ugly you are or how you look or how you talk. The power is in the gospel of Jesus Christ. These men understand that. And that's where the success comes from. This is David. He's one of our students. Like I said, there's a lot of persecution. He baptized 5 people in his village. You know, a lot of times people say, well, you know, in India, it's easy. Here in the United States, it's difficult. Well, what happened? He baptized 5 people in his village. Some of the radical Hindus were upset. They came to his house. They pulled up a fence post in his front yard in front of his wife and his children. They beat him, broke his arm, broke his leg, just beat him mercilessly. And this has happened to so many of our brothers and sisters. What happens is they come back stronger, and God blesses them, and the church just thrives in those areas where our brothers stand for the truth. But here's one of the greatest things we have going on right now. We're in the middle of printing 30,000 copies of the New Testament in the Tamil language. Tamil is what's spoken down where we are. And we're getting ready now to do another 30,000 in the Telugu language, that's the state north of us, because we're really moving heavily into that state. It's hard to teach the Bible to a man that doesn't have a Bible. But I get really excited when I think about 30,000 copies of God's New Testament going into Hindu homes in India. Does that excite you? It excites me, I want to tell you. And they gave me 16 pages in the front of this to write as an introduction. So these are the things I wrote about. Wrote about God, finally came down, wrote about the church and so forth. So I'm just really excited because we have a chance to give an introduction to the church. Of course, these Bibles are given to very many poor people in India, a lot of poverty there. But James chapter 2, verse 5 says, hearken, my beloved brethren, has not God chosen the poor of this world to be rich in faith? So the poor people, COVID was horrible. We lost so many of our friends. We lost so many preachers. The funeral buyers were not enough. They were having to burn bodies so rapidly. And so we lost a lot of brothers and sisters. We had people that were starving to death. Men who I read who had written about they woke up in the morning and their children, they were being quiet because they didn't want their children to wake up, because they went to sleep crying because they didn't have food, and they didn't want them to wake up because they still didn't have food. When I saw that, it broke my heart. And I called the elders and I said, brothers, we work under the Crossville Church Christ elders. The work is under them. And I called them, I said, we need to do something about this. Can we feed 10,000 people? And they said, sounds like a good idea, sounds like a good work. So we raised the money to feed 10,000 people. When it got to India, they took their own money, put it with that, did the work themselves, scraped and scrimped, and fed 25,000 people. And so every time that we fed somebody, just like Imbaraj here is getting up and sharing the gospel with people, because how can you give a man physical bread and not teach them about the spiritual bread, Jesus Christ, which is more important? You know, I would rather starve to death because I didn't have physical bread, but have the spiritual bread, Jesus Christ, and have eternal life. That is far more important. And more than 3,000 were baptized during COVID relief. We went to this one place. This is one of the men. I haven't seen this man probably in years. We had people coming because once they're trained, they go back to their works, and we don't see them for the rest of their lives unless we happen to go through their village and there's their congregations, you know. And so I was meeting with all the men to try to discuss what we were going to do because of COVID. The government had locked the country down, and nobody could get out. So this man, I pointed to him, and I asked him to stand up. And I asked him, I said, how many souls you baptized the last 18 months? 55, 57, something like that. I said, how many of those are still faithful? And he said, 100%, brother. And all the other brothers in the room started shaking their heads because they know him. And I said, how have you done this? Because the church hasn't been able to meet. And he said, we never stopped meeting. He said, we had one place, there's 2 congregations that he has started and preaches for. He said, one place we met at 3 o'clock in the morning before everybody got out of bed. He said, the next place we met at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I said, how many people were there? And he said, the attendance went up, brother. And that really puzzled me. The attendance went up. And I think it's because people want to sacrifice. We need to sacrifice for the kingdom of God. If you don't pay much for something, you don't think much of it. And you know, if you don't invest much in the kingdom of God, you don't have a very high appreciation of it. These people were able to sacrifice, and because of their sacrifice, it made their faith stronger. But anyway, I got ready to leave that day. These men had come there, paid their own way, paid for their own food. I got ready to leave that day, and I said, guys, you know, we're going to give you all $7.50 today to pay for your transportation to get here because they're self-supported men. They were so excited. They were just elated, and I just felt ashamed of myself. And I said, we're going to do better than that. We're going to give you $15. We're going to give you enough for 2 days just as a little extra bonus. They were really excited about that. And anyway, this was our little auto rickshaw. Solomon, a few years ago, I was talking to him and I said, brother, what can we do to help you? And he said, if I had an auto rickshaw, he said, men are having Bible studies at night. They finish at 9 o'clock. The buses have stopped running. They have to walk all night to get back to their home, and they have to go to work the next morning. If we had an auto rickshaw, we could just run out and pick them up and take them home. And so I thought about it, and I said, well, that sounds like a good investment. So it's $5,000. I said, let's get you a little minivan. And he said, no, brother, not a minivan. He said, we can put 21 people on an auto rickshaw, and we can only put 12 people in a minivan. And I thought, oh, yeah, what was I thinking? And anyway, so then when COVID hit, everything was locked down. Our brother's got this little auto rickshaw with Church of Christ across the front of it. They're very clever. Where did our policeman go? Where's John? Is John in here? He's out on patrol. Okay. Well, anyway, they were very clever, so they went out and they bought bottles of water and cookies. Now, in the U.S., you would buy donuts. But they went out and got cookies and water, and they were taking it and giving it to the policemen every day. And after a few days, the policemen were like, we know you people from the Church of Christ, and we know what you're doing. You go do your work, and if anybody gives you any trouble, you come to us. We'll take care of it. So our little auto rickshaw was the only vehicle running up and down the roads taking care of people. It was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful opportunity. As I said, we go into many of the, Jesus said go into Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem, and the uttermost parts of the earth. I think this is the uttermost parts of the earth. But this is where the gospel is being taken, where it's never been taken before. We help widows. Widows are very much discriminated against. Part of it's because of that culture. Part of it's because of reincarnation and believing that you did something bad in a former life. And that's why you are where you are today in your life. And if somebody associates with you, the bad karma may rub off on you. So it's really sad situation. But we had over 100 COVID widows because of, in the church, I'm not talking about, this is not just the general population. In the church, we had over 100 women that their husbands died. And so what we do is we go and we buy goats. We buy them 5, 6 goats, depending on how many children they have. And then those goats, they're able to take care of themselves and sell the goats, sell goat milk, and they're set for life. And as a matter of fact, they do very well. Most of them do. This is a meeting I had with the men last year to discuss a couple of new programs. One was satellite preaching schools, because now instead of establishing a school of preaching, we're putting in satellite schools, where that we go into an area where there's not very many congregations. We establish a satellite school that everybody understands is only going to be there for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, that teacher goes back to his job, and that program closes, and we go somewhere and we open another program with a different teacher. That keeps these programs from becoming dependent on us. Again, that's the whole objective. Plus, it allows us to cover a lot more territory. Another idea was for soul-winning workshops to go into the areas where we have these congregations and teach the church members how to do evangelism. And so this was the first one of those at Monterey. If you look closely, you can see Kathy walking in the front door of the building. We got inside. I saw Kathy taking a picture. I thought she was taking a picture of me because I was up there preaching. She wasn't taking a picture of me. She was taking a picture of the goat in the aisle, if you see the goat. Because a lot of times we're preaching a whole flock of goats, a whole herd of goats will come through, or a flock of chickens. And, if the goats come through, you can chase them out. But if y'all ever have a flock of chickens come through here, leave them be, because chickens can really make a mess. And but anyway, we preach the gospel to every creature. What can I say? So I got up to preach that morning, and I thought, this is the deadest bunch of looking men. Look at them. I thought, we're not going to get anything. It's kind of like a car that's been sitting out in the garage for about 10 years. You're going to go turn the ignition, and you hope the engine will turn over. And I was standing there looking at those men, and I thought, y'all aren't going to turn over. That spark is not there. And so we preached all day, talked about evangelism, talking about the condition of the lost. They got so fired up that night, because it was you're 2 days in the seminar. The third day is for evangelism and going out and combing relatives and whatever. They got so fired up, they went home that night, they called their relatives, and they said, you don't understand, you're lost. You have to obey the gospel. The very next day, they brought relatives, and we baptized 8 people on the second day. On the third day, we baptized 21. But the whole church is getting mobilized. And of course, these, as I've already told you, the satellite preaching schools are being started, and then this is a group of men on the last trip. We're getting ready to start. There are 8 satellite schools that we just started this year. So I went around to every one of those schools, and it's kind of, I gave the men a warning. Your teacher, if you don't do this, if you're not on time, if you don't do your homework, if you don't do your memory verses. And by the way, before you can get into one of these schools, you have a list of 50 memory verses. You have another list. You go through 3 exams that you have to pass, because 2 Timothy 2:2 says, teach faithful men, not flakes. Too many times we got a bunch of flaky preachers in this country. I just want to say, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else, but we got a bunch of lazy preachers, and not all of them, just we have a bunch of them. It says train faithful men, I knew men that went to school to be a preacher because they couldn't do anything else. They thought that'd be an easy way, you know. We don't train flakes. We train faithful men. So when you come in, the first thing we do is we put down a piece of paper and we say, write your 50 memory verses. They write their 50 memory verses. They go through 2 other, and then we have to have a letter from the people in that congregation to show they've been faithful for more than 2 years before they're allowed into the program. So my job is to go around and talk to these men and to warn them, you've got to keep the rules. The teacher's going to have to, he's got to do his job or you're endangering the whole school. You know, so I go around and and the teachers really appreciate me doing that. I am blessed. This is Kathy sitting up here. Kathy is a bookkeeper. I own 3 businesses in North Carolina. She's been keeping up with all of my businesses for 40 years. We got 50 years coming up next month, guys. But she's been keeping up with all of my books, and she's a wonderful bookkeeper. She crosses every T, she dots every I. And in India, what she's doing here in this picture is she's sitting down combing through the records in one of the schools, making sure the receipts match the records so that we can see that the money really is spent where it's supposed to be spent. And then on a monthly basis, she gives that to the elders. She gives a report to the elders that shows exactly, let me just say, if there's anybody here who has ever given money to this work in whatever month, you tell me about it. We'll go back. You can look on the elders report and you can see your name. Now that's private information. Your name will be there. The amount of money that you gave will be there. And then in the end, the elders are shown how that money is spent. So because Kathy does that, I'm free. I can go evangelize. I can go start programs. And God married me to a wonderful, wonderful woman. Another thing we do is we have 5 children's homes. James 1:27 says you don't have pure religion if you don't take care of the widows and the orphans. Orphans have a very special place in the heart of God. And so as a matter of fact, 2 of these homes were just started because of COVID and children losing both parents. This is during COVID. I was not able to be there. We always have a Bible Bee program every year. So I told the children, I said, in all the campuses, I said, so you study Galatians, Ephesians, and Philippians, and then we're going to do this Zoom call, and I'm going to ask you questions. I'm not giving you questions in advance. You study the books, you learn the books, and if you know the books of Galatians, Ephesians, and Philippians, you can win this competition. And so they were like, okay, brother. Well, at this point, maybe I was 8 hours into this thing. I was asking questions, and it was me and the translator both were like, they got it right, brother. And, we were just, every time a kid would miss a question, we almost rejoiced. And so it finally dawned on me, and I said to them, I said, have you memorized Galatians, Ephesians, and Philippians? And they said, yes, brother. Well, I was asking positive questions that required a negative answer because I was trying to make the kids sit down. Well, when you ask that kind of a question, they get this confused look on their face, and they just quote you the scripture. You can't argue with that. And so then I just started calling out scripture references and telling them to give me the verse, and they would quote the verse. Or I would give them a verse, and they had to tell me the reference. And it really is. This is the number one thing on our campus is Bible knowledge. I mean, I tell the staff, I say, if we come over here, one of these kids have a snotty nose, you won't get fired for that. But if we come over here and these kids don't know the Bible, you're out of here. Because these kids have got to go to heaven. And to get to heaven, they have to have the Bible knowledge. So this is number one at all of our campuses. This is Issachar. He's preaching on Sunday morning. Issachar had such a good sermon that morning. I went to him afterwards and I said, brother, I need a copy of that outline. I'm going to develop it for myself. If Issachar was sitting here, I could point to him and I could say, Issachar, get up here and preach a sermon for us. He would say, okay, brother, what subject do you want me to preach on? I mean, these, and we probably have 15 or 20 of our young men who do exactly that. All of these old guys, that been around like me, they come and we use our boys a lot of times as speakers in our lectureship programs. All these old men, they start pulling out paper and ink pens and start writing stuff down. And it's great. We're very loved. And Kathy and I had gone into a meeting. The girls were afraid they were not going to be able to see us. This is at the D&I campus. And so they all snuck over quietly. When we came out of the meeting, there they were. And aren't they sweet? They're really, really precious. My birthday, I said to Kathy, I said, don't tell anybody that it's my birthday. I don't like the attention. And so she said, okay, I won't tell anybody. We went to the DNI campus. This was the gate when we pulled up at the front gate. And then those children lined up in a row had all made me gifts. And as I walked down, they were all stepping out one by one and giving. I had to have 2 kids carrying stuff. I was like a prime minister, and it was so sweet. And the director came to me and he said, the children said they wanted to do this, and I told them, no, you can't do this. Brother Don won't like this, and I don't like attention. And they said, we don't care. He's our dad. Please let us do this. And he said, so I said, okay, you are the one responsible for this. You're the one who has to talk to him about this. But it was one of the sweetest things that I've ever seen, and I don't ever want to do it again. But this is the new Morning Star home that we just were able to start. I said to the girls, I said, people in the U.S., they don't know how you sleep. So they ran and got their blankets and brought them in to show you all how they sleep in India. Part of this very wise, very hot in that country, and it's hot here, guys, but not like there. But that's why many times animals won't sleep on a concrete floor because it's cool. And if you get hot enough, now you want to sleep on a concrete floor. But they've always slept on a concrete floor. We don't put our kids in beds. For the first 15 or 20 years, we didn't put running water in the houses, so they would have to carry water. Not that we're being mean, but these children have to grow up in this culture and in this society. And when they leave our campus, they won't have a bed, and they probably will not have running water in their houses. So they're ready, they're set, and you don't want to take them out of their culture. This is just one of the little girls. That's a good picture, isn't it? He is a sweet young man who took this picture. I was thinking about one of the kids one time. I'd made the mistake, one of the boys. I said to him something about him not having a father. I shouldn't have said that anyway, but I did. I blurted it out. And he said, I have a father. And I said, oh, yes, you do. And this is the scripture that comes to mind. God is the father of the fatherless. These children, they do have a father. Aren't you thankful God gave us these places? In the beginning of the work, we didn't have these campuses. We saw these children. There were needs, and we needed to do something, but there was no place to go. And now we can say, yes, we have a place for you. You come on. And they don't realize just how blessed they are. This little boy had been there about 2 months. He buttoned his collar, and he stood up like this, and he just started quoting scriptures and quoting all the books of the Bible. And it was just so sweet. And this is our Morning Star. We've purchased property there, 2 acres of property. We're in the middle of building this building right now. The children at that campus, there's 1 house for boys, 1 house for girls. And but this is I drew this up, and it's being built right now. It's almost finished. This was our groundbreaking ceremony. The kids came out, and we prayed about it, and these are the buildings that are actually being built. They're a little bit further along than that, as a matter of fact. But this building is already fully taken. And so we're getting ready, starting to focus now on the next one. But when the property was laid out, we laid it out with a plan for, okay, this is where building number 2, it'll be 3, 4, 5 will go. Plus we leave room on the property for agriculture purposes because kids need to work. And that's very important. There was an auto rickshaw out there in the field that had been bought for Morning Star, and I saw that thing, and it was just kind of like, I got to do this. I jumped down, and I went out, and I got in it and cranked it up. I'd never been able to drive one of these, and I've always wanted to. Well, all the staff came running. They didn't know I knew how to drive, so they were running beside the vehicle because they were afraid that, well, I don't know that I know how to drive. But anyway, it was a nice experience. We stopped by the bakery on our way out to Morning Star and picked up cakes. We went in, and to the kid, because they don't get this. This is a very unusual thing. And so we went in, and the cook came, and the cook said, no, you can't. Remember how your mom used to do this? you can't do that. You're going to spoil their appetite. And I said, listen, I'm a grandfather, and she is a grandmother. And when our grandkids get ready and they want something, they get it. And I said, we're getting ready to feed these kids cake, and I don't care if they don't eat a bite of their dinner. And she said, okay. Now you know why those kids jump out and hand me a gift, or, it's they love us and we love them. The little boy you see on the left is Pranal. Pranal, his mother and father died. He had an older sister who was a teenager. We have several of our children in this situation. She had to go to work to support her and her little brother. And there was nobody to take care of Pranal from the time he was 2 years old. So she would tie him in a chair in the morning when she left, and then she would lock the door to lock him in case he got out of the chair. And, she wasn't being cruel. This girl had nothing else she could do. This was the only choice she had. And he stayed tied in that chair until she came home after dark that night to untie him. That was 6 years of being tied in a chair. When we got him a few months ago, his head was over to the side because that was the position he was tied in, and he couldn't communicate. He's coming out of his shell now. And sitting here on this porch, he's having ice cream for the first time in his life. Many of our kids, this is another thing we do about every few years, is we go buy ice cream. And because they don't get that. So Pranal's having ice cream. Kathy was wondering, she asked him, she said, because she didn't see his cup, she said, did you get ice cream? Have you had a cup of ice cream? And he said, no. And he said, I've had two. And but he got his tongue, and it was down in the cup, and it was going all around on the inside of the cup. Are you thankful for this? Are you thankful that God is a compassionate God that gave us a place for Pranal to where he's now with us and being taken care of? God's church is great. And, many of our children have been in, I don't know if I'm working this or they're working it, but I'm probably hitting the wrong button. There's Manisha. She's another one that just came to us, 7 years old. Her father died of AIDS. Her mother is very sick now, and her mother can't take care of her anymore. It's really sad because these kids in the beginning, they don't want to be with us, and they don't understand what's going on, and we have to deal with that and try to help them adjust. But we were all holding our breath because she had to be tested, and so it took a number of days for those tests to get back. She does not have AIDS, and so we're so thankful for that. And these are all of the, we had to have a new bus at the children's home at DAI. I've been seeing them. They push it off in the morning and run and jump on it to go to school. And I've been thinking, we've got to get a new bus. We've got to do something about this. So we did. And the house mothers get out there. They're old, and they get out there and they're pushing this thing and trying to run. And so anyway, we have a new bus now. And I don't think the animation is there to show you them pushing it. These are our boys making concrete blocks. I hired a block mason to come in and teach them how to lay blocks. And this is the campus wall that they're building around our campus. This is Samson as he's getting the rice field ready. 17 years old. He loves tractors and equipment. So he takes care of this tractor at our campus. And I was calling him Samsung for a long time because they name kids after appliances a lot. And but they finally said, brother, it's Samson, like Delilah and Samson. I said, okay, that's fine. But here's the girls doing some sewing. Our children, this is our new YLA leadership program for our children that are 17, 18 years old. After they finished high school, we put them into this program. It's 3 hours of Bible in the morning. Then we have vocational classes in the afternoon. It's a 2-year program because we have to get them ready to go out. That's what parents have to do for their children. It is a beautiful, beautiful program. These girls, we raised them. And now to see them developing the way that they are, these are the boys in that program. And the teachers are evangelists. And they're not academics, but they're evangelists. And that's what the boys and the girls are relating to that because they're fathers and they love them. And the teachers are kind of taking them under their wing and they love these children. And when they get ready to go out and do evangelism, they take the children. And our boys are really excited because of the number of Bible studies they've had and the number of people that have actually been baptized because of them. This is one of the tailoring classes. This is the last slide. These were the children that came. There's little Manisha, the little girl. These were the new girls that just showed up at Morning Star. But aren't you thankful for this campus? Aren't you thankful these children have a place to go? It's a blessing that they have this place. So I guess we take questions, or are we over?
Well, if you need to get kids from classes, it's that time. So you might need to go rescue kiddos. If you want to bring them back in here, he's going to do a little Q&A. If any of you have questions, I've got a couple of questions. So we don't need to blast out of here. This is pretty amazing. It's the first time to see it. It's unbelievable.
That was a 3-hour presentation.
So I've got a question, Don. Tell us about your support.
Personally,
Yes.
we are self-supported. We also support the work, and but we have the businesses in North Carolina, and so we have people that work there, so we're able to do that, and that's like Paul making tents, and that helps too with the men when we say you got to be self-supported, and if they, it's like we do that too, But it's just a real, if we had to have support, we'd have to have support, but God has blessed us to where we don't have to do that. And so, yes, Debbie.
I know you helped a lot of widows who lost their husbands during COVID, but that's something that you've done for a number of years.
Yes.
Do you have any estimate of how many widows, because they are, just like you say, outcasts from their relatives. Their relatives don't want to have anything to do with them. So if they don't have support, they will die. Their children will die.
Yeah.
And everybody will just say, well, they deserve it.
Yeah. We have helped a lot. I have no idea because we've been helping widows. We've been helping widows for more than 20 years. And we go back and look, and some of them have barns now. They have herds. And they came to us and they said, we need for you to build us a barn. And I said, we're not building you a barn. You build your own barn. And you need to be taking some of those goats and sharing them with other widows now, as a matter of fact. It's a good success story. And we do try to follow up. It's probably 90, 95% effective. Out of that last group of over 100 widows that were helped, that cost $30,000 to be able to do that. And, it was more than that, yeah. We had one congregation where the elders announced to the church, we want to do this, and we're going to have a special contribution. Whatever the church gives, we're going to double it from the church treasury. And they didn't expect the church to give $17,000. So they called up and said, we got $34,000 coming your way. I said, Lord works in mysterious ways. But usually a widow with goats, it winds up costing about $700, $750 by the time you buy the goats, help her with the fodder for a year and so forth. But then they're set. Yes, sir.
So politically, it's a little bit of a challenge, I would imagine, to be a church. Christianity is not wonderfully accepted.
Yeah.
So is the church making ground and being respected? How's that balance going?
Some of them on the local level, because the children's homes, there are a lot of people who are very deceitful with children's homes in India. And by the way, if anybody's sending you emails trying to get money and talk about their children's homes and all that, please don't do that. If it's not under an eldership and being overseen, you have no idea how much money they're getting from how many people. But on a local level, we love our children, and the officials have actually said these people from the Church of Christ are doing this right. And so we're gaining some, and a lot of the government officials are actually sending children to us now. In the bigger scheme, India said that they would rid themselves of Christianity by 2025. That's not going to happen, I don't think. But Modi, the Prime Minister of India, is very Hindu. And the Hindus put him into office, and now they have been radicalized. And, we have people getting beaten more than ever before. In the church, a lot of people who've been working in India through the years, there are FCRAs. An FCRA is an account that you have to bring foreign funds into India, and they monitor that. Even if we didn't, the Indian government can tell you exactly when a woman with goats, when money's brought into that country for goats, we have to show the picture, tell the woman, and explain where that money went. And so we have to maintain an FCRA account. The government pulled most of the Christian FCRA accounts last year. Even the Mother Teresa organization, which is one of the largest organizations in India, they pulled them. We had one group that had 500 children's homes in India. They lost their FCRA, and they burned down one of the children's homes too. But this is another reason. Please be praying for this work, because the window is open, and we've got to do all we can right now, and just keep praying that the pressure lightens up. Our FCRA was renewed. Yeah, everybody, we're very thankful. We have 2 of these, as a matter of fact, one for the children's homes and one for the preaching schools. And both of ours were renewed for 5 years. So we have 5 years ahead of us right now. And by the way, I'm there on a business visa because I export items from India that we sell in our business here. And because of that, I'm allowed, but they're turning Americans around who are coming into India now. But because I have the business visa, we're able to go in and continue to work. Yeah, 1 year at a time. So please keep praying about. We used to get 10-year visas, but now they're doing it 1 year at a time. And any other questions?